Our work on the digital development team, in the M-Health space, we kind of look at the operating environment for these systems. So it's kind of in three different areas. One is kind of general across the digital space, in that we engage with the telecoms industry in the different geographies that we are working with. And look at kind of negotiating rates and access and data with digital, and mainly kind of basic technologies. The next is kind of looking at data platforms, and specifically on APIs, and making sure that we have interoperability amongst different systems. So in the case, and the majority of our applied work is in West Africa on the Ebola response. So in this case, where number one, we have very limited information when the disease broke out in a major way, kind of last summer and fall, we had little understanding of the spread of the disease, and then poor engagement with communities. So first, in order just to get an understanding of what was happening, there was a whole bunch of different organizations that went out and tried to collect data. And so many of their platforms were not able to talk to one another. So we couldn't get an aggregate understanding of the whole at all. So the interoperability ensures that whatever tool or tech that you use, it can plug and play with everyone else. So developing those standards is a major part of now the development of the underlying health information systems and architecture. Then we start looking at a program that I lead on adaptive programming using digital technology. So in the case of M-Track in Uganda, or lots of these other types of medical stock level tracking systems, you have a feedback that will come from a community health worker to a district health office. And what will happen is that every single week the district health office will make decisions on stock levels in terms of where to shift and move a lot of the medical supplies to ensure that each health clinic has operational, whether it's cold chain storage, or whether it's actual functional and functioning service providers. If there's any other sorts of issues with the health service delivery, it's able to then check it and then to rectify it in some cases. So the adaptive element is that you have constant pinging between the district health office and the health clinic in terms of its levels, in terms of what it needs. And then this also gets supplemented by a direct line that community members can plug in for free using a short code that's allotted for. So in the case of Uganda, it's 8200, where you can basically send a text at no cost talking about the service delivery, about the conditions of the health clinic, about if there's any type of disease outbreak or spread, where that's happening, what's going on with that. And then this gets to be a form of validation for the district health office, but then also the ministry to check up. And so you have this kind of accountability layer that's built in there. So I think significance on this is an interesting word, because we're still seeing a space that is very nascent. So you have lots of implications for what can happen just because of the ubiquity of mobile phones, the acumen and understanding in a lot of these communities that we're working in whether it's in extreme poverty or low and even middle income countries. And so we can access a lot of resources in terms of the communities that we can reach that we haven't reached before, right? And if we're looking at these mobile systems as kind of information pathways in terms of how we're engaging with communities, and then how our services are being provided, whether it's kind of on the contextual data side of doing ethnographic work and understanding on that front, or it's on the operational side in terms of the actual transactions and work that's happening on that front. It can greatly supplement and extend a lot of healthcare services. On the other side, you have diagnostic tools. You have lots of other, beyond just kind of communication, but actual assessment and analytics that are involved, right there at point of care. So I think that the significance is tough because these are all potentials, right? And we can talk about potential impacts and larger effects and implications that it can provide. But the underlying bit is, if you don't have good governance, if you don't have accountability measures in place, if you don't have the ability to enforce on any of these feedbacks, then these tools are just tricks, right? So they are in every single case a supplemental tool and a catalyst, but you need the inherent underlying structures in place for that. Otherwise, the implication on the flip side is that they do very little. But what's worse is they could have serious negative consequences, right? So especially on the information side, when we start looking at security, when we start looking at cases of domestic abuse and violence, right? And if you are saying to a woman that we want you to report all these cases, but they don't know who has access to that information, what if it is the partner or the spouse or whoever is perpetrating that, then none of it really matters. The challenges are understanding and then the design of the mobile health applications, along with health systems strengthening and good governance, across the board. And so as we kind of saw, especially with the Ebola outbreak, a lot of the wider community, especially from the tech side, wanted to say, let's come in and drop technology down, right? We have a lack of information, a lack of understanding. Let's bring in information communication technologies, right? And that should alleviate a lot of the problems and issues. And we've seen so many cases where we drop in technology and it's not done in an appropriate way, and it has negative consequences with that. So the challenge is understanding the development part in digital development, right? There's a lot of hype and excitement about the digital aspect of it, but we have to do good development, and then understanding where it can be supplemented by digital applications and platforms. And it's not, in many ways, it's not just an efficiency factor. So a lot of people says, oh, we can get, information faster, more quicker. But again, you can change participatory methods. You can change the way that we engage. You can change who engages, right? So again, in development, you usually have an external entity that comes in and says, oh, we have something to intervene with, or a suggestion or a platform. Now all of a sudden you have indigenous solutions that can pop up, right? And we have work that's being done here on grassroots innovations, and that's a great example. So the digital economy provides a pathway to do this. And we see this very much so in health, we see it in finance, but now we're starting to see it in agriculture, we're now starting to see it in education, and a variety of other sectors. And I think that, to me, the exciting part is when it no longer just becomes M-Health or M-Ag or M-Ed, and we start looking at the intersections between different development interventions and actual interventions that encompass a variety of different fields.